Yeah, welcome to another EcoDharma exploration. If you don't know me, my name is Kristen Barker. I'm the director and one of the co-founders of One Earth Sangha, now in our second decade. That sounds so weird. I've never said it that way. But that makes me feel really old. Um, but yeah, we're here to support a response to polycrisis, to what can feel so overwhelming about what's happening with, inside of, to our world, with the fabric of our connections, and do so in a response that is rooted in this incredible tradition of Buddha Dharma. And so, with that, I will say before I move on that I am coming to you from the Potomac watershed, the lands of the Piscataway people. I am always grateful for the underappreciated role that they have had in the ecological well-being of this place, in its in the spirit of the land that is here, especially in the spirit of that Potomac River. If y'all are watching the weather maps at all today, you know we are in the midst of a big storm here, and it is really cold. So I'm feeling happy to be warm inside with all of you, and what a privilege that is. And just as we might bow to the empty bowl before we fill it with our food, let's just take a moment here to appreciate and send well wishes to all those who are underhoused or unhoused right now, especially when it's so cold. So yeah, it's good to be with you all. I want to welcome a member of our team, Nikayla, who's going to be supporting us with the tech today. Welcome, Nikayla. Thanks for supporting us. And then to introduce a friend and beloved colleague, Eden Tull. Deborah Eden Tull is author of several books that I love, one in particular, because I think the darkness is so underappreciated, and that we tend to celebrate the light, but yet we live half of our lives in the dark. And so her book, Luminous Darkness, is one of my favorites. She is a former monastic who integrates Buddha Dharma with post-patriarchal lenses, and also does training for leadership around embodiment. And I think if you haven't met her and been familiar with her work before, you'll maybe get a sense for that. So yeah, so we're really, really happy to have her with us today. Yeah, really, really good to be with you all here. With that, I will turn it over to Eden. Eden, dear one, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining One Earth Sangha and our EcoDharma explorations this Sunday.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Nikayla. Gratitude to all of you for being here. My heart aches today. I feel tender. I feel such a deep sadness about what is unfolding even just this weekend. And I want to just share from the start that one of the things that continually heartens me is the recognition of the deep healing and embodied practice and work that is taking place in small communities, in small gatherings just like this across the globe right now. And that one of my intentions today is to inspire and empower the quality of leadership. I'm going to be helping us to explore yin leadership, relational leadership, emergent leadership that might support each of you and might support our larger communities as we navigate the unfathomable right now. And from the beginning, I'd like to name that We're all called to be leaders in this time of change. We're all called, each in our own ways. Some of you might be in Dharma leadership positions or professional leadership positions, and some of you might be more aware or curious about the leadership that comes through you as a generous relational presence in your community, as a parent, as an artist, as an organic farmer. So many forms. Are you with me? From the start, I'd like to just offer a frame for leadership because we are emerging from, graduating from, tiring of, getting bored of, I hope, old models of leadership that have excluded the yin and that have overpronounced the yang force, power over dominance. And so leadership, just being willing to let go of projecting someone else has the answers, being willing to let go of the illusion of separation and hierarchy, because we can't truly be good leaders from that place, and allowing the inner compass, which is our point of connectivity with our somatic feedback system, right? Embodiment and field consciousness, allowing our inner compass to guide us on behalf of life, to be service on behalf of life, to be a tuning fork for field consciousness, okay? So before we dive in further, just following some of the wonderful community encouragements that Kristen offered, I want to really encourage us to be honoring of our earth body as we engage together on screen, to take our seats metaphorically, symbolically, physically, in a way that is honoring of the living process of being in an earth body, okay? And also, I always like to name that sometimes the presence of the screen of Zoom can kind of trigger within us either a false formality or a little bit of a distancing. It can even allow us to hide out sometimes. And I just offer that, with all that's going on in our world right now, let's seize this opportunity, friends, to just show up and be human together, to drop any false formality and really see the opportunity for community as a verb. Okay? I think Kristen really said the rest of what needs to be said, but I'm going to emphasize the invitation through dharmic exploration, through embodied inquiry, to really rest together in not knowing, in non-conclusion, in the curiosity that takes us beyond binary perception to welcome and celebrate the both and, especially as we explore yin and yang today. And lastly, I'll name that I am a bit physically fragile right now. My eyes have really been struggling with screens. And so I'll be taking care of myself today. And at times, I'm going to put on these glasses, which after Hurricane Helene took every belonging I ever had, the glasses company offered to replace through one pair, both sun and blue light and reading. So that's what I got. Okay? All right. Let's pause. Before we move into a short meditation, I just want to remind us to be mindful of duality today. At times, I'll discuss specific qualities of yin and yang, of the elemental dark and light in nature and consciousness. The medicine of one in particular has been wildly, unfathomably overlooked in the dominant paradigm. At the same time, I'm inviting you to move beyond duality, to recognize yin and yang, light and dark, as a pair, as a constant sacred interplay. So these intentions are not in opposition to each other. When we move out of duality, we don't eliminate the two qualities that occupy the poles of that duality. They're part of the full spectrum. And also just to presence the symbol of the Tao. Beautifully, the yin and yang are curled around each other, okay? And within the center of dark is a drop of light. Within the center of light is a drop of dark. So with that, please find a comfortable position. Really letting go of any ideas you have about posture and letting your earth body guide you to a position of kindness. Can be helpful to connect with sense of a strong back, soft heart. As we invite the eyes to rest, either closed or in a soft gaze, let's bring our awareness down into the body, down into root, pelvis, hips, sits bones, sacrum. And I invite you here to receive 3 of the deepest and slowest breaths you've taken today. Welcoming yourself as you are, inviting breath to begin to relax you. Noticing how it feels to rest in darkened stillness. With breath flowing in its organic rhythm. Let's rest in the deep listening within and out. That is the essence of meditation. Listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment. listening, not solely an auditory practice, but energetic, tactile, sensory, listening from the place beyond extraction. Just noticing, attuning to how you are arriving today. In the field of darkened stillness, allowing space, allowing room for intimacy with what is. Nothing to make happen, nothing to do, to fix or change in this moment. Just resting in receptivity. The field of intimacy with what is. Aware of the deeper, darker undercurrents of your own experience. Letting whatever is arising within you be. Letting whatever is arising through. Letting go just a little more. In the next few minutes of silence, of spaciousness, just being aware of all that is arising and passing. thought, emotion, sensation. Energy, sound, vibration. Being aware of all that is arising, and equally being aware of the space, the field, the darkness through which it is arising and passing. Allow yourself to be aware, awake to all that is changing and that which is not changing. Awareness itself. Allow yourself to be aware of your lived, direct, moment by moment experience of feeling held by the earth, letting awareness expand moment by moment, maybe breath by breath, to 360 degrees. And with another deep, full body breath now. I invite you to become even more curious for a moment about the experience of darkened stillness, about the experience, the guide, the presence of darkness itself, just through sitting in receptivity with eyes resting or closed. All of light arises from darkness, all insight, all vision, all creativity, all imagination. The dominant paradigm defines darkness as the absence of light. And as you sit right now, I'd like you to be curious of if darkness were not the absence of light, for we're not the absence of anything. What is it the presence of? Through your direct experience, what qualities? What is physical darkness the presence of? And so let's take in one more deep, full body breath together now. Maybe sighing out loud as you exhale. If it would feel kind to rest a hand on heart or belly or both as we begin to bring our meditation to a close. To offer yourself whatever form of compassion, of loving kindness, of reassurance feels authentic in this moment. And then I invite you to very gently, friends, begin to open your eyes. Let's allow the eyes first to meet the horizon, the natural light, before returning to the screen. Palms together, if that feels natural for you. Consider how overlooked and undervalued the elemental darkness, yin, the restorative, receptive, still, quiet aspects of nature and consciousness are within the dominant paradigm. Here we are in wintertime. This is a winter EcoDharma teaching. And in this season of nature laying fallow, of the quietude, the gestation, the incubation, so many of the qualities of wintertime and wintering are discounted in today's world, yeah? And come to life for us in meditation. Show of hands of how many of you can relate to what I'm introducing, what I'm reminding us of too. Okay. So as I move into some reflections on yin leadership and why this quality, to make it easier for my eyes, I might refer to some printed notes at some time. And so here's where I want to begin. When we sit in meditation, we rest in our innate receptivity. We rest in the field of non-doing, of undoing, of deep embodied listening, of attunement that, as you know well through your direct experience, perhaps wakes us up to remembering our unity with all of life, okay? Suzuki Roshi, who brought Soto Zen to the United States, used to speak to large groups of people in silent meditation, saying, express yourself fully. That can sound really counterintuitive. In the stillness and the quietude of meditation, express yourself fully. But he was pointing so beautifully to the receptive aspect of our nature, of our being. The quietude and non-doing, the elemental darkness, the yin, which allows for a completely different form of expression. Yin is not passive. We like to think of yang as active and yin as passive, There's elements in that. Yang is more active, but yin is an expression of relational presence that allows for us to experience, receive, relate, and engage consciously with all of life through relationality. I'll talk today both through the inspiration of Zen Buddhism and Taoism. Zen Buddhism evolved through Chan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, which evolved through Taoism. And I like to remind people that relational presence, this phrase is a phrase that Eihei Dogen, the 12th century founder of Soto Zen, way back in the day used to describe what meditation actually is, reconnecting us, okay, to relational presence. Relational forms of knowing, something that I talk about in Luminous Darkness as endarkenment, letting our bodies be the antennae, the tuning fork, the experience of no self, separate self dissolving so that I can attune, receive, respond more skillfully, consciously, and as a leader, facilitate. Facilitate means to make easier. Consciousness, let's say, to make easier evolution, to make easier healing, okay? Show of hands of how many of you are in positions of leadership where you either guide groups or work with groups or with people one-on-one in some form, in some way. Just helps me to have a little context. Okay. So one of the first teachers I had in relational leadership was my very first year in college. I was a passionate environmental studies student and passionate about social justice. And I had a teacher called Karen Warren, who was an embodiment of yin leadership, teacher of ecofeminism, a teacher of really, for me, EcoDharma from a beyond Buddhist perspective. And I remember the first time I worked with Karen, she showed up in such a way which really modeled a leader getting out of the way as the seat of their wisdom offering, getting out of the way, emptying, right? And opening to being willing to focus on, being willing to facilitate the wisdom of the group, the healing of the community, the forest and the tree at the same time, through non-doing, through less is more. My father was also an extraordinary model of yin leadership. And for the record, sometimes we think of yin leadership more as feminine leadership, relational leadership, or the domain of the feminine. I'd like us to hold it in the sense of the elemental feminine or masculine rather than getting into anything related to gender ideas. And in my family, just as an example, my father held the yin, my mother held the yang. My father was the devoted, contemplative, in his contemplative practice, deep listener for our community, for our family. This was an experience I got to have the divine privilege of receiving as a child, what it's like to have a deep listener in my field 24 hours a day. And when he passed when I was 11 years old, the hole, the gap, the chasm that remained when that was no longer in existence, okay? And that's part of my path to Buddhism. But in my family, my father modeled the yin, my mother modeled the yang, and together they modeled the dynamic interplay that is possible through the yin and yang. Again, yin is not passive. Through listening to the communities they worked with, they were social justice activists, their work seeded a community movement, a revolutionary, visionary community movement that I got to bear witness to growing up and participate in, that was about responding consciously to the needs of underserved populations, in the place, Los Angeles, where I grew up, in powerful, powerful ways, because it was seated in relationality, not top down, seated in relationality. When I became a Zen Buddhist and began facilitating and guiding groups in Dharma circles and EcoDharma circles, I quickly became aware that even in Buddhism, there seemed to be a divide passed down through the presence of patriarchy and the residue of male monasticism being the primary form that Buddhism has come through, okay? Leaving out relationality, discounting relationality. The first book I wrote when I left the monastery where I trained to become a lay teacher was Relational Mindfulness, a handbook for deepening our connection with ourselves, each other, our planet, because I saw such a deep need within Buddhism, within the world we're practicing in, within the dominant paradigm, to really offer a bridge for people, for practicing on the cushion, for our contemplative practice, to seeing relationship as an expression of sacred activism and leadership as an expression of relationality, okay? I saw something missing, something missing. And the more I began to become aware of all the messages that some of you know well, as they reveal themselves through our own conditioning, as we let go and let go more through meditation practice, the messaging that comes through, that has come through capitalism and colonialism, imperialism, patriarchy, and a profound disconnect from the natural world. I saw how profoundly, just speaking for myself, the pressure to abide by a narrative that says yang is holier than yin, that says force is more powerful and vital than gentleness, that says doing, activity, productivity, getting somewhere, attainment, seeking conclusion, being directive is more worthy than receptivity. How much that still permeated my own consciousness, and how much it created and fed a wild tear in the fabric of human relationship in every single domain I could see. I saw the extension of this duality, this false divide, personally, interpersonally, transpersonally, societally, in our relationship with the natural world, everywhere that I looked. And I believe right now, at this moment of, I'll just speak for myself, sobering, humbling, heart-wrenching, despairing moment in the poly crisis that we face. I see this divide playing out in pornographic repercussions. I see the modeling and the expression of yang leadership, of force being more welcome than receptivity, hitting an all-time crisis. And I just invite you to reflect on this in your own way through what you have witnessed and are witnessing in our world. So meditation reawakened me to the balance that bridges the power of the dark and light, the yin and yang, the receptive and expressive aspects of our nature. I recently read an article by, an interview with Francis Weller, who wrote the Wild Edge of Sorrow. Am I getting the title right? It's really a phenomenal book. And one of the things that he points to is this kind of flatlining in the dominant culture, flatlining of emotions, flatlining of turning away. I speak in Luminous Darkness of this as sun shining too, trying to keep things light, keep things pretty, keep things easy, pushing away harder and harder and harder for anyone to do that these days. But the flatlining I see as an expression of both what happens when we overuse the yang And also we could speak to it when we underuse the yin as the spacious, allowing, welcoming field that makes room in our communities, in the circles in which we are showing up to participate, to serve, makes room for our emotions, for the deeper heart undercurrents of the human experience, that makes room for much more to be expressed, to be invited into, to be healed. And I want you to just pause for a moment, rest the eyes, if you will, and simply presence, very simply. Someone in your life, someone on your path who has been a profoundly deep listener for you, who has perhaps modeled in personal or group fields the embodiment of yin, relational presence, and the impact on you, what qualities you feel in your body, even thinking of this being, okay? And even alongside the power of relational presence, the need for it, the crisis we're in leadership points to leading by force, leading by egocentricity, leading by manipulation and brutality, charisma, arrogance, the discounting and abusing of the relational field. So while relational presence points to getting ego out of the way, being of service to the unifying field, being of service to the field consciousness and the attunement that can only come through our earth bodies. Our earth bodies are instruments for this, yeah? The leadership that we're graduating from is exactly the opposite, and we've had tremendous experiences and forces in human history. One I could name is the burning times, right, in which over 1 million beings, not all women, were killed, were burned at the stake, were murdered through the choosing to turn to earth body as connective point to the divine, earth-based practices, relational practices as tuning fork to the divine. At that point in history, it was very clear you can only go through the male authority of the church. You will be punished if this earth body is used, is accessed, is celebrated as connectivity with the divine, and to just consider the impact still, in visible and invisible ways, yeah? So let's pause for a moment, connect with breath and body. And I want to read just a short excerpt from Luminous Darkness. I talk about the yin and yang in leadership as needing to be in sacred balance and interplay, friends, okay? Conscious allowing, we can think of on one hand as the domain of the yin. And this is metaphorically the soft, open hand of receptivity, just deep listening. That's step one with whoever we ever meet or engage with, whatever form of life we engage with. First, the soft, open hand of receptivity. And sometimes that's the only form of compassion needed. On the other hand, we also have to have conscious protection, Manjushri sword, which cuts through delusion, which is willing to say the sacred no when no needs to be expressed. This is something I think a lot of practitioners misconstruing ideas about the right Buddhist practice form forgets. In this excerpt, I want to talk a little bit about what it means to facilitate, okay? To facilitate the job, I believe, of relational leaders. This is called from humiliation to humility, okay? When we're willing to go beyond me versus you, we can experience and facilitate shared consciousness. Facilitate means to make easier. When we show up in relational leadership, we make easier the experience of unity for a group. This is not a lofty idea. It doesn't discount our individual experience and vast differences. It simply invites us as individuals into the experience of shared presence, relational presence. We're all called to lead on behalf of what we love and the future we wish to co-create. This is true, whether we're in positions of professional leadership, whether we're educators, activists, artists, or members of the human family, ready to contribute to serving life more wholeheartedly, okay? But the more we move beyond binary perception, the easier we can embrace a paradigm of leading with our whole selves. I talk about this as leading in the dark and being led by the dark. Sometimes I talk about leadership, authentic leadership, as showing up naked. My practice is to show up as I am. It's to show up as Eden. It's to show up in my whole self. It's to show up to hold, but also to practice feeling held by the field, to not feed any more so than our projections we're often holding towards leaders. A separation, okay? A separation. For a part of the psyche, nothing is more vulnerable than moving into a leadership position. Research has shown the fear of public speaking is one of the top 3 human fears, okay? Through the framework of conditional love, a framework in which we often feel judged and rejected, we all have experienced moments in which we felt embarrassed or feared that we would appear stupid in front of a group. The dominant paradigm teaches that leaders are not meant to experience doubt, fear, fragility, or make mistakes. A leader needs to present their best self all the time, correct? I just want to pause. I find that statement absolutely exhausting. Leaders are in essence meant to transcend humanness. This is a faulty proposition. We also have to contend with the long legacy of spiritual teachers and wisdom keepers sitting on a pedestal, imparting wisdom. And, we have a lot to learn about what it means to practice shared power rather than power over, acknowledging the subtleties of this. We're not asking people to wash away the sacredness of discipleship, for instance, but to recognize the need through relational presence, through relational forms of knowing and attunement, to ask questions that can help us to emerge to something beyond the power over model. People who might otherwise be motivated to step into leadership roles might instead refrain from doing so due to pressure and fear of humiliation perpetuated by the hierarchical model. Leader, someone who's strong, sturdy, certain level of charisma and confidence. And I say in luminous darkness, we all fail sometimes. We all fail at meeting artificial and unrealistic standards. We all disappoint sometimes. So genuine leadership has not a thing to do with supreme confidence or performance or perfection. It has to do with presence, with courage, with vulnerability, with fierce compassion. I think lastly from this segment of the book, I'll share that the more we drop into the vulnerability of leading from emergence, which means above all, My practice is to get out of the way. Our practice is to get out of the way and to listen more humbly, to let ourselves be in the dark, be in not knowing, to let ourselves be guided by the dark. And this allows us to empower and to sense into the medicine needed for whoever it is we are with, whoever it is we're leading. The monastery where I trained, we had a phrase, willing to lead, willing to be led. In any moment, you could be asked to be the leader. In any moment, you could ask to be the one being led. The humility of the both and, okay? I'm looking for one excerpt. Here it is. Just to consider. Authentic leadership means to show up naked, without a shield or sword, without a script. We can allow our relationships to be about transformation rather than proving ourselves. Instead of seeking approval from others, we can receive it directly from ourselves. We can also begin to realize that we're not the hero achieving the grail. We are the obstruction. We are the obstruction. So again, our job being to get out of the way. Yeah. A couple more reflections about receptivity. An EcoDharma teaching on receptivity. Receptivity is magnetic. Consider Mother Earth, an example of receptivity. The Earth is not solely a mass of rock and water moving through space. She's an all-powerful magnetic force with the North Pole and South Pole, holding together the atmosphere, the oceans, all expressions of life. She's the unified field of Gaia consciousness, which contains so many multidimensional aspects and elements. And I want us to consider for a moment how that magnetism of receptivity, of non-doing and coming home to the spaciousness, allows interbeing, allows the mycelial network of relationship to go from the background maybe to the foreground, to become the medicine itself. Let's just pause and each notice what's arising in our body minds as we listen together. Just notice what's here. I remember a point in my practice when I really got it. The degree to which, through the messaging of yang being so much more accepted in the dominant paradigm and yin being something to actually punish yourself for, or to hide, or to certainly not see as a strength, a point when I truly got to see the harm that was being caused within and out through that false divide, but also recognize that, from my perspective, I believe it's actually a fear of authentic power that keeps us discounting the yin. I don't believe we can evolve human consciousness if we're continually cutting off one half of nature, one half of consciousness. For me, I'm going to use the phrase, the superpowers of relational leadership, which I teach now to people leading in many, many domains of life, as a spiritual practice, as a devotional practice, as a devotional path. These superpowers get revealed only when we fully are willing to let go into the receptive aspect of nature, which we were once told is weak, which we were once told is a weakness. And from that place that we're speaking of, this deep listening as a way of life, that's the only way that we enter, or remember, I could say, conversation with the cosmos, with the more than human world, with the invisible alongside the visible, that we simply can't access when we're discounting our own attunement faculties. Yeah. I think I want to end with a poem by Joy Harjo, and then I'd like to open it up for questions and for reflections. And I'll just share that, this is a topic, friends, that I'm really passionate about. And today we can just touch the surface of it. We can really just touch. But I'm going to invite us later in our time together into a relational practice, an embodiment practice that is very much about getting out of our heads and just seeing what happens when we drop more deeply into the listening, the attunement, the sensual and sensory aliveness of our earth bodies. And I'll be curious what happens for you then. So here's the poem. Some of you might know this one, okay? Written in 1951, which is extraordinary. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people and all people are you. Remember you are this universe and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. And for those who don't know that poem, we can share that in the follow-up, okay? So in this age of the Great Unravelling, at this time of emergence, emergent leadership requires us to really be courageous enough to set aside our ideas and concepts based on old made-up stories of what a leader is, and to take our seats in relationality, to be willing to lead and be willing to be led, and to rest in the deep listening that is our meditation practice, that allows life to guide to show us the way at a time when we are asking questions which are pivotal questions about the possibility or not of future for humans on life, of life on Earth. So I want to pause here. Yes, I want to go first right back to the definition of facilitate, which comes from the root to make easier. And so in the case of consciousness, to make easier wakefulness, to make easier evolution, to make easier healing. When we, in my experience, rest, really rest in non-doing, when we pause from the collective addiction to doing, productivity, getting somewhere, attainment, making things happen, in my personal experience, that is where we recognize that this field of non-doing, this field of spaciousness, this field of darkness is a great healer. Mother darkness, Kuan Yin energy, receptivity itself as healer. So when I shared the open hand as the symbol, the empty hand, as one half of our expression of compassion. Yes, we need the fierce compassion too, but this empty hand. Show of hands of how many of you, whether personally, somatically, through your body and health, through your community, through ancestral healing, whatever domains, have experienced just being given the space of conscious allowing. Tremendous healing has happened in your life or in your community. That's the healing of the yin. Yeah. The space for the restoration. It is that space. That's why President Francis Weller, in his statement about flatlining, it is that space that allows for the relationality, the emotions, the feelings, the angst, the outrage, the anger, the despair, the what the F is going on about the state of the world to be held in a field of love, love, and a field of embodiment rather than headiness, concept. It's not going to happen if we're having conceptual explorations or trying to analyze things. So that, friends, brings me to presencing Joanna Macy, one of my teachers and mentors since I was my early 20s, one of the blessings of this lifetime, Joanna really modeled relational leadership. And those of you who know her know she modeled yin and yang. Yeah. And one of the gifts Joanna gave us in her practices was inviting groups of people to really go past some of the formality that can be projected onto, in this case, a Zoom exploration that can be projected onto serious topics like the polycrisis is, and reminded us to bring equally our willingness for levity and our willingness for a childlike wonder and our willingness for conscious use of the imagination and our willingness for a curiosity that comes from our earth bodies, that is what's made more alive by resting in receptivity. So does everyone have now a sacred stone with you of some kind? A stone or rock, a mineral to work with today? This isn't a practice I've ever guided on Zoom, and this isn't a practice that comes through Joanna. It's just something that I wanted us to engage in today, to just have an experience of curiosity and embodiment together. As we're talking about emergent leadership, emergence touches on deep time, rather than just being in linear time and geological time. And I find it necessary if I'm not going to get swallowed into despair about the state of our world, to regularly have ways of remembering deep time, geological time beyond what I can imagine. In Zen, there's a teaching called Uji, being time, that when we're resting in the moment, listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment, there's a past, present, future connection that happens, okay? And so if you can take out your stone and just place it in the palm of your hand, rest your eyes, whether closed or in a soft gaze. You might know nothing intellectually about this stone, that's fine. You might know something. Beginner's mind is all you need for this. You might have a sense of how old this mineral is or not. Some of the oldest minerals, lands on our planet is 4 billion years old. Where I am today in Hawaii, it's very young, 800,000 years old. Just rest with curiosity for a moment about how old this stone might be. This is a practice about listening, sensing, feeling, receiving through our sensory, intuitive, imaginal, and receptive faculties. Just an invitation to get out of our heads and explore embodiment. Allow yourself for the next 2 minutes just to hold this stone in curiosity, in tactile, energetic listening. Noticing the textures and shapes, playing, if you will, with this stone. Holding it in a non-extractive way that just allows you to receive any impressions that come through your sensory awareness, that allow you to feel your appreciation and gratitude and respect, recognizing that everything is alive. Everything is sentient. You might bring the stone up and rest it on your cheek just to sense into it, to be with it, to just say, I'm here, I'm listening, and to let your tactile listening be alive. This is just about being in our bodies together, being in our earth bodies, and listening with curiosity, levity, and openness. Hey, welcome. Just reflecting on your experience in that practice may have been outside the box for some of you or different on Zoom. Would you be willing to share a word or phrase in the chat for just something that you received through that experience together? Just something that you received, okay? Just taking a minute, just seeing if we can create a string of poetry together in the chat, if you're willing to bring your voice in that way. And just notice also how it feels in your body and being to be here, to return to this group field, okay? Would you be willing then to read it through?
Sure.
Let's just hear some of these. Yeah, we'll share the poem in the follow-up, and I'll see if I can. Michaela.
Pure poetry, new friend. Change, connection, humility, sense of love, protective love, warmth and smiles, an experience of awe, a perspective that this is but a blip in time, consolation of deep time, warmth, healed, being the support, in eternal unresolvability. Thank you, Kristen. Good humored, expanded awareness, connection, intimacy with this being of stone, my human partner and her stone, lots of love among us throughout time. Honored to listen to. Heartstones sending messages of love. The tender absurdity of anthropocent. I can't say it. A clear expression of light. Water distills pointedness into curves, flowing all around. Water, fire made points. Water smooths them, curving. Meeting another individual human being attending this call.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Here's what I'd like to say. First, thank you for engaging in perhaps a non-habitual way. I want to bring us back to the remembrance that with everything in practice and everything about the intensity of these times, our foundation is compassion and being aware as a living process of when we're using a practice or suggestion to feed spiritual bypass, or again, flatlining, as Francis Weller puts, the kind of pushing away of reality and pushing away of our vibrant aliveness, which contains our full body response to what's happening. And so in the context that I teach relationality and yin leadership, in the book Relational Mindfulness that I've written, it's based on 9 principles, okay? All that come from the meditation cushion and are brought into how we relate with ourselves, with each other, with our planet, with the issues we face. The first number of those are receptive. It's about beginning by resting in the pause, by emptying, becoming more aware of our egoic agendas that get in the way of a deeper heart's intention. And we don't stop there. We then invite more of the expressive, the transparency, the courageous truth-telling, the compassionate action is the 9th principle, which the other principles feed. And so what I'm pointing to is, there can be a lot of questioning of, well, what is the point of stillness, of receptivity, when what's happening requires our urgent response. And I really invite people to inquire into what is the experiential difference between urgency and immediacy, the urgency that can feed defending against what we fear, the immediacy that can feed protecting what we love, but being open, as we recognize the yin and yang, to the full spectrum, nothing left out of what conscious response might look like. Is that a helpful reminder to people? And being aware, for me, resting in the yin first, taking that seat first, again and again, I've learned that it helps me to perceive more clearly, to see more clearly the lens through which I'm coming at something, the ego additions I might be bringing to an action I'm about to take, and trusting that patience is going to help me receive the directive from a place bigger than urgency, more embodied than urgency, more skillful than what comes through me in fear-based urgency. This is a inquiry we're all part of right now. We're all engaging in our own ways, but I wanted to presence it here and now. Compassionate response is the deepest inquiry. What is the deepest expression of service in this moment? What is best for all in this moment? Thank you for listening. Very briefly, I've gone a couple minutes over. I just want to appreciate you all for being here and dedicate the merit of our time together to all beings across time and space, human and more than human, specifically and directly those being most aggressively attacked and victimized by the forces of corruption we are bearing witness to in this moment. Thank you. And those who would like to go deeper in this work, there's a link for my work and for a training called Heart of Listening on behalf of our collective 6-month journey. You're welcome to check out. Kristen, I took up too much time. All yours.
Yeah, so, oh, no. You took up the right amount of time. Thank you so much. Just find myself like feeling my lungs and the necessary receptive space of my lungs being the reason that I can live, I can breathe, is that receptivity of my lungs. And so I'm taking a deep breath now, just really thanking my beloved friend and colleague Eden for your provocative, deep Dharma and so resonant. Thank you for connecting with us and with this moment that we are all sensing in very different ways. But the facilitation, the easeful bringing together that you've offered here, really beautiful. Before you leave, my dear ones, can you do one or Sangha a quick favor? Can you respond to the 4-question, I think, Michaela, the 4-question poll? This is part of what we, this is like the mundane business, right? But there's something here about helping us understand how these things are landing that really is, important for us to we're starting to want to gather more data around this stuff and just look at how these things are landing for you all. So if you can answer those 4 questions, I'd be so grateful. While you are doing that, I will do this unfair thing of splitting your attention by telling you that next month, we have Guyapati with us. Guyapati has been doing EcoDharma longer than One Sangha, longer in some ways than David Loy, who wrote EcoDharma. Guyapati, and originally it was called the EcoDharma Center in Spain. Now the ULEX project is going to be with us next month. And this man is one of the best articulators that I've ever seen of what Buddhism can bring to socially engaged practice, to the transformation of our worlds. So we have an interview with him on our website right now that Michaela did just this last month, so you can get some kind of feeling for him. But he's a really fantastic expression of the Dharma, in my view. So really welcome you to that. You can always support Eden's work. Michaela will put a link to that, how you can support Eden's teaching. And then we, of course, always invite support for our work. If you donated as part of your registration, thank you so much for that. And if you can always click the donate button on our website and offer. Really, thank you. It was really good. I'm sort of like in my sort of fuzzy sick state still, but it was like it made me kind of in this liminal place with you. And I really loved this discussion. Really love being with you all today. Thank you again, dear Eden. Thank you, Sangha. Feel free to unmute and share whatever voicings you want to share with the Sanghas. Go well, be well, dear ones.